Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tesvav, Daf 16 of Masechta. What are we learning again? Yoma. What's the deal with that? 1 second. Cool. So today what we're talking about is, so we had discussed towards the end of the Daf yesterday, this machloket. Well, that was this, right. We have two seemingly conflicting mishnayos in Masechta Yoma. One is that the Kohen Gadol does the ketores, seemingly does the ketores first, and then the hatavas haneros during the week leading up to Yom Kippur while he's quarantining, to kind of get in the sort of rhythm of doing these things before Yom Kippur. And then we have other mishnayos later on in the Masechta which discusses the lotteries in the Beis Hamikdash, and it says that in the second lottery of the day they would they would choose who would do the hatavas haneris, who would clean out the menorah from the night before, and only in the third lottery would they get to the ketores. So first we seem to be saying that the ketores is first and then the neris, and then we're saying that the neris is first and then the ketores. So the question is, why? So Abaye gave his answer yesterday at the end, which was, well, our Mishnah which says Ketores and then Neris is talking about the last two Neris, whereas later on when we say Neris and then Ketores is talking about the first five. So we're going to explore that a little bit more. And then we are going to see the opinion of Rav Papa. And then we get to another machlokas that we had seen earlier, which is regarding the blood of the Korban Tamid, which is that the Tanakama says it's Shtaim Shein Arba. You throw the blood on the north and eastern corner as well as the southwestern corner. And then there was the opinion of Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, who says that it's a combination really of Shtaim Shein Arba and Arba Shein Arba. We'll get there a little bit later. So let's begin. So just to slightly get us give us a running start. So as I had said a minute ago, Abaye explained, right? So we have a Mishnah in Yoma which seems to be implying that first we do the ketores and then we do the hatavas haneris. So at the ketores is burning the incense every morning and every evening. So first we would burn the incense in the morning, and then only afterwards would we clean out the menorah, the lamp, from the night before, from the burning that it was lit all night. And then later on, however, in the second parak of Masechta Yoma, when describing the lotteries that they had every day in the Beis Hamikdash to determine which Kohen is going to do which job, so we say that first would be the lottery for the hatavas haneris, and then only afterwards would be the lottery for the ketores. So the question is, what comes first, ketores and then neris, or neris and then ketores? So Abaye answers this question by saying that, well, in the first parak, we're talking about when we say ketores and then neris, it means those neris are the last two neris, right? That there were 7 candles in the menorah, so they would first clean out the first 5 and then get to the last 2 later, and in between would be the ketores, and that is the opinion of the rabbis. That is the opinion of the rabbis, that the first 5 and the last 2 would be divided by the ketores in the middle. Abba Shaul, however, so just to continue on that for a second, and therefore, in the second parak, when we say that the lottery was first for the hatavas haneris and then only afterwards it was for the ketores, so that's talking about the first 5 neris. So they would do the lottery for the first 5 neris, and then after that would be the lottery for who's going to do the ketores, and then later on they would complete with the last 2 neris. Okay, very good. Now, so we're saying right now that basically, to understand this, we're saying that they would first clean out the first 5 candles, then they would do the ketores in the middle, and then they would do the last candles. However, that's actually a machlokas if that's what actually divided up the 5 and the 2. Everybody agrees that there was a division between the first 5 and the last 2. The question is, what was dividing it? So that is the opinion of the rabbis, that the dividing factor was the ketores. However, Abba Shaul says that actually they did the first 5, and then they slaughtered the Korban Tamid Shel Shachar, and also threw its blood on the Mizbech, and then did the last 2 neris, and then after they did all 7 of the candles, only then would they do the ketores. Okay? So it's on this machlokas between Abba Shaul and the Rabbanon that we will begin our daf today. So, my time at the Abba Shaul says the Gemara and Daf Yudalet Amud Beis 3 lines from the bottom. How come Abba Shaul says that you first do all 7 of the neiros before you start with the Ketores? The Chsiv is the pasuk says, "Baboker beitivos neiros v'hadu yaktirena." Right? What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, "Victor olav aharon Ketores sabim baboker that Aharon will offer this incense every morning. Beitivos neiros yaktirena." That when he cleans out the menorah, then, or at least that's how Abba Shaul wants to learn it, is that only after he's done cleaning out the entire menorah, after he's done all 7 candles, only then, yaktirena, only then will he move on to doing the Ketores. That's Abba Shaul's argument. And according to the rabbis, how do they understand this pasuk? What they say is, that at the time that you're doing the Atavas Haneros, the Ketores should be burning. So Ki'ilu, do 5 of the Atavas Haneros, burn the Ketores, and then complete doing the remaining 2 candles. So while you're doing the candles, already the incense is burning, because in the middle of the process, you already start burning the incense. The ilote machi, and if you don't say like this, continue the rabbis, Benu Arbaim Dirsiv Uvaha'alos Aharon Esaneros Benu Arbaim Yaktirena, that when it says in the afternoon, that when Aharon cleans out the menorah, so he will burn incense. Right? This is the Gemara that we saw in Masechta Pesachim. Hachinami de Bereishim Adlik Neris V'Adam Aktir Ktoris. So Abba Shaul knew. You wanted to explain the first pasuk of Beitivos Neris Yaktirena, that in the morning when it says that he cleans out the Neris, he'll burn the Ketores. It means that first he cleans out the Neris and only then he burns the Ketores. Well, then what about in the afternoon when it says V'Ha'alos Aharon Esaneros Ben Arbaim Yaktirena, that when Aharon lights the candles in the afternoon, he'll burn the Ketores? Abba Shaul, do you also explain that as meaning that first he will light the menorah in the afternoon and only then he will burn the Ketores? That's impossible. Is it possible that you're going to explain Abba Shaul the same way in the afternoon, that first Aharon lights the menorah and only afterwards does he burn the Ketores? And Abba Shaul, if you're going to say, yeah, that's what it means. First he lights the menorah and then he burns the Ketores. Impossible. We learned in a brisa that we saw in Masechta Pesachim, me'erev ad boker, it says by the menorah that you'll light it from the evening until the morning. Okay, make sure that you put in enough oil. This is not our proof. Make sure that you put in enough oil that it'll last, that it'll be lit all night. And it has to be the same amount of oil you're going to put in every night of the year, and will make it through the night. So therefore you even have to put in, even in the summer when the nights are shorter, you still have to put in enough oil as if it was the middle of the winter when the nights are longer. Fine. Seder. Now here's our proof. Another way to understand this is me'erev ad boker. What does it mean from the evening until the morning? Ein lecha avoda sheksher me'erev ad boker elazo bavad. There is, right, this is the only thing happening me'erev ad boker. There's no other service happening in the temple me'erev ad boker, from when the menorah is lit in the evening until the morning, except for the menorah. The only thing happening in the temple at night is that the menorah is burning. And therefore, you can't be doing the incense after the menorah, because once you light the menorah, that's it. And therefore, Abba Shaul, certainly in the afternoon, when it says that Aharon lights the menorah, and then only, in the pasuk only then says yaktirena, that he'll burn the incense, clearly that is not saying that first he lights the menorah and then burns the incense, because once you light the menorah, you're not doing anything else. So what's the pasuk saying? That at the time that you light the menorah in the afternoon, the incense is already burning. So Achanami, argues the rabbis, Be'idan Atava, that at the time that you're cleaning out the menorah in the morning, the incense should be burning, i.e., first do the first 5, then burn the Ketores, and then complete the last 2. But it is not Abba Shaul saying that first you do all 7, and then and then burn the Ketores. Abba Shaul Amar Lach, Abba Shaul will respond to you, Shiny Asam Dichsiv Oso. Abba Shaul says, meh, don't bring me a proof from the afternoon lighting of the menorah, because over there it specifically says in the pasuk Me'erev ad boker. What does it say? Yaroch oso aharon Me'erev ad boker. That it's from the word oso, it, that only it is from afternoon until morning and nothing else from the evening until the morning. So specifically by the afternoon we have it specifies that there shouldn't be anything else, but we don't have such a specification in the morning. And therefore, since we don't have such a limitation in the morning, so then I'll say, look, it says, Beitivos and Eros Yaktirena, that first you do the Atavos and Eros, and only after you've done all 7 do you burn it. There's no limitation in the morning to say otherwise. In the afternoon it says Osof, from which we learned that nothing else should be going on. So it says, Abba Shaul, fine, I admit in the afternoon you're not going to burn the incense after the candles. However, in the morning, when we don't have such a limitation, so I'll argue that first do all 7 candles and then only afterwards do the incense. Rav Papa Amar. Rav Papa wants to answer the question differently. Which question? Our original question of how come here it sounds like the Kohen Gadol when he's in the week leading up to Yom Kippur, so he does the avoda every day to get into the rhythm. So it says that first he does the Ketores and only afterwards he does the candles, cleaning out the candles. So the question is why? Because later on, by the lotteries, it says first we have the lottery for the candles and only afterwards the lottery for the Ketores. So how come it's reversed? So Abai wanted to say, well, the first parak where it says first the Ketores and then the candles, that's talking about the last 2 candles, whereas the second parak where it says the candles and then the Ketores is talking about the first 5 candles. Rav Papa wants to say that no, actually what we're seeing here is the machlokas between the rabbis and Abba Shaul. That's how you explain it. Not the first 2 and not the first 5 and the last 2, but rather our parak. When it says first comes the Ketores and only afterwards the candles, that is the opinion of the rabbis, who say that that the Ketores is what is dividing up the first 5 and the last 2, and therefore first you're doing the Ketores and only afterwards are you doing the last 2 candles. Whereas the second parak, where it says that first you're doing the candles and only afterwards you're doing the Ketores, that's Abba Shaul, who says that you do all 7 candles and only afterwards you do the Ketores. Rav Papa Amar says, Rav Papa Lo Kasha, it's no question between the first parak of Yoma and the second parak of Yoma. Harabanan ho Abba Shaul, the first parak is the rabbis, the second parak is Abba Shaul. B'mayukim til masnisin dohachal k'Rabbanan, payis k'Abba Shaul. So 1 second, says the Gemara, I got a kasha. So wait, you're saying that the first parak of Yoma, when it says the Ketores and then the menorah, that is the opinion of the rabbis, because the rabbis say that you put the Ketores in the middle, dividing up the first 5 and the last 2. And you're saying that in the second parak of Masechta Yoma, it's Abba Shaul. And that's why we're saying candles and then Ketores, because first you do all 7 candles and then only afterwards you get to the Ketores. But let me ask you a kasha Maseifa, says the Gemara. Hevilo is hatomid. So this is talking about the Kohen Gadol doing the service on Yom Kippur. So they brought to him the tamid, lamb, sheep, lamb, animal. Kartzo, so he slits the neck of the animal, but he only does it enough to be yotzezan. He doesn't do like a complete, he does a kosher shchita, but only enough so that the trachea and the esophagus are cut most of the way. Umorak acher shchita al yado, and then somebody else completes the shchita after he's already yotze. And this is because the Kohen Gadol has to do everything by himself on Yom Kippur, right? The avodah on Yom Kippur is kosher only if it's done by the Kohen Gadol. And because the Kohen Gadol needs to do everything himself, so he's got to move quickly. So what he does is he slits the neck of the animal just enough, then he gives it over to the different Kohen to complete the shchita, and then nichnas laktir es aktoris uleitiv es haneris. And then it says he goes in to the heichal to burn the ketores and to do the atavas haneris. So obviously that is not the opinion of Abba Shaul, because we're saying that first he does the ketores and then he does the neris, whereas Abba Shaul would say that you got to do all the neiros before the Ketores. So asan l'Rabbanan, which means that clearly we're talking about the rabbis, and what it means is that he does the Ketores and then he does the neiros, the last 2 neiros. So frak the Gemara, Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanan u'Mitziasa Abashol. So 1 second, Rav Papa, you're saying that in the first parak when it says Ketores and then neiros, that's the rabbis. In the second parak, when it says neiros and then Ketores, that's Abashol. But let me ask you a kasha. In the third parak, when it says that the Kohen Gadol goes into the Heichal and he does the Ketores and then he does the neiros, that must be the rabbis again. So it's an Abashol sandwich. We have the rabbis in the first parak, Abashol in the second parak, the rabbis once again in the third parak. Does that make sense? Why is it jumping around so much? Rav Papa says that's exactly it. We're jumping around. The first parak and the third parak is the rabbis. The second parak is Abashol. Frekta Gemara Bishlama Abaye Lo'amaka Rav Papa Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanan Mitzvasa Abashol Lomokimla. So says the Gemara, I understand why Abaye would be hesitant to say like Rav Papa for the question that we just asked. It's weird to say that we're jumping back and forth. That first we're talking about the opinion of the rabbis, then we're talking about the opinion of Abashol, then we're going back to the opinion of the rabbis. Abaye says, look, that's weird. So I understand why he'd be unwilling or hesitant to say like Rav Papa that the first parak is the rabbis and the second parak is Abashol. And then of course the third parak would be the rabbis again. Rav Papa my time below Amrika Abaye. But why doesn't Rav Papa say like Abaye? Then he doesn't have to, defend his position, his sort of strange position of jumping back and forth. So Omer Loch Tana Bresha Atavas Shtei Neres Vada Atavas Chomish Neres. So Rav Papa says, well, Abaye's opinion isn't exactly perfect either. Because according to Abaye, you have to explain that in the first parak when it says that first he does the Ketores and then he does the neiros, it's talking about he does the Ketores and then he does the last 2 neiros. And then you have to explain according to Abaye that in the next parak when it says that first they have the lot for the neiros and then afterwards the Ketores, it means the first 5 neiros and then the Ketores. So why are we first talking about the last 2 neiros and then only afterwards talking about the first 5 neiros? Wouldn't it make sense to talk about the first 5 first? So Rav Papa says, look, Abaye is not that much better. He's also got his kashas. The Abaye Amalach, whereas Abaye would respond to you, Aruye ba'almu de kamori v'sidra ahadar tani lei. Says Abaye, I wouldn't get too technical. In the first parak, when we're talking about the Kohen Gadol and saying that the 7 days of quarantine leading up to Yom Kippur, he would do the avodah himself every single day. We're not going into details about what went first and what went second. All we're saying is that the 7 days leading up to Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would do all of the things by himself, and this includes Hatavas HaNeiros. Well, I guess technically the opposite order. It includes the Ketores, it includes the Hatavas HaNeiros. It's not necessarily saying that, and by the way, first we do the Ketores, and then we do the Hatavas HaNeiros, and that's talking about the last 2 neiros. No, it's just saying that he would do all the things, including these things, but it's not giving orders per se. Whereas then, when we get to the second parak, and we say, well, this lot was for the neiros, the next lot was for the ketores. That's already getting into the order of things. And there we're saying, yes, the lot was for the first 5 candles, and then afterwards was the lot for the ketores. So Abaye says the first parak is talking about the second 2 neiros, the last 2 neiros. Second parak is talking about the first 5 neiros. And Zeo. But the first parak isn't necessarily going into details about what happened when. It's sort of just listing the things that the Kohen Gadol would do, and that's why it's okay to say, according to Abaye, that the first parak is talking about the last 2 neiros, and then only the second parak starts talking about the first 5. Gufa, we had said earlier, that the Kohen, when we're doing the Tamid, the Korban Tamid, and we got to throw the blood on the altar. So the Kohen would get to the northeast corner of the Mizbeach, and he would throw the blood onto the corner of the Mizbeach, right? Kilu on the side. Imagine the Mizbeach. How tall was the Mizbeach? 10 amas, I think. At least the Mizbeach in the desert was. I assume it's the same thing in the Beis HaMikdash. So let's say it's 10 amas, about 15 feet tall. So if you're standing on the floor, the Mizbeach was 15 feet tall. It's like pretty tall, right? So you take the vessel that the blood is in, and you throw it from the vessel, right, and it'll hit against the side of the Mizbeach, on the corner. And first it'll hit the eastern side of the Mizbeach, and then he throws it in such a way that it'll hit both the eastern side and the northern side of the corners. So in one fell swoop, he can get the blood on two sides of the Mizbeach, on the east and the west. Maybe we could change our phrase from feeding two birds with one seed to throwing blood on two sides of the altar with one throw. How's that? It's pretty smooth, right? He can throw the blood on two sides of the altar with one throw. Maybe we got to work on that a little. Yeah, we'll work on it a little. We'll get it. 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 You may as well throw two sides with one throw. Bloody two walls with one avoda. I don't know. Let's go weiter. Okay. So says the Gemara again. Gufa Padal Kain Mizrachis Tzvonis. So he gets to the northeast corner of the Mizbeach. Nosim Mizrachis Tzvonis. So he throws the blood on the Mizbeach on the north and the east. Marav is Dromis. He gets to the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. Nosim Marav is Dromis, and he throws the blood also in this sort of cover two sides with one throw kind of way. He throws the blood on the western and southern sides of the Mizbeach via the corner. V'tani Allah, and we taught about it. Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah Mishana B'Tomit, that Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah did things slightly differently. Okay, so he does the northeast corner the same way. He gets the northeast corner and throws the blood on the corner so that it hits both walls. Ma'arav is Dromis, he gets to the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach, Nosin Ma'arava, and here's where he differs, V'achakach Nosin Daroma. He first puts it on the western wall, and then he puts it on the southern wall. So whereas the Tanakama says he gets to the southwestern corner, and he does this same sort of method or technique, where he throws the blood against the corner, and it gets both on the western and southern walls. According to Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, what he does is no. He gets to the corner, and first he applies the blood to the western wall, and only then does he apply the blood to the southern wall of the Mizbeach. So basically you have the first one, according to Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, by the northeastern corner, you have one activity one throwing, which gets on both walls via the corner, whereas when it comes to the southwestern corner, you're going to apply each wall separately. My time with Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah. How come? Why does Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah have this combination approach, which is that you have the, one action for two walls by the northeast one, whereas two separate applications on the southwest. Says the pasuk, by the offering, by the Musaf Rosh Chodesh, by the offering of Rosh Chodesh, that it says, Usir izim echad l'chatas, you bring one goat as a sin offering, La Hashem, to the Eibishter, Al Olas HaTamid Ye'asa V'Nisko, and on the Ola offering of the morning, of the Tamid that's offered every day, Ye'asa V'Nisko, it should be done with its libations. Olahi, so here's the drasha, that regarding the Korban Tamid, regarding the offering that you would offer every day, so it's a Korban Ola. Now, the halacha of the Korban Ola is that the blood is applied to the Mizbeach in a method called Shtayim Shein Arba, 2 that is 4, as I explained a minute ago. What he would do is he would go to the northeastern corner, and he would throw the blood against the corner, and it would get on the north and eastern sides, respectively. And then he would do the same thing at the southwestern corner. So Shtayim, he's really only throwing the blood against the Mizbeach twice, but by doing so, because he's throwing it against the corner, he's getting blood on all 4 sides of the Mizbeach. So it's what's called Shtayim Shein Arba. However, the drasha here is that, the Korban Tamid is a Korban Ola. Okay? But however, but the Torah is saying, right, that you should also do it like a Korban Chatas, that the Korban Tamid, while it is an Ola, and it goes entirely on the Mizbeach, and it's entirely burnt for God, but nonetheless, there is a part of it that should be done like a Korban Chatas, because again, the pasuk says by the Rosh Chodesh, it says, Usir izim echad l'chatas al olas hatamid, that you should offer this goat offering as a chatas on the ola satamid. And what we want to say is that the korban tamid, the ola of the korban tamid, should be done in such a way that there's a shtickle part of it that has characteristics of a korban chatas. Haketzad. So how do you make a korban ola that's like a korban chatas? Well, nosin achas sheishtayim kimaise ola shtayim shein shtayim kimaise chatas. Well, what you could do is you could throw the blood, right. So there's 4 sides of the mizbeach. So what you could do is you can go to the northeastern corner and in one action throw the blood against the corner, and that'll get on both the east and northern sides. And then what you can do is you can go to the southwestern corner, and instead of throwing the blood against the corner once, you will apply them separately for the western side and for the southern side separately. And that'll be like a chatas, because a korban chatas you apply to the 4 corners of the mizbeach. You actually climb to the top of the mizbeach, and you go to the top of each of the 4 corners, and you apply the blood with your finger separately for each of the 4 corners. So, in order to satisfy the korban tamid having characteristics of both the ola and the chatas, what we do is we go to the northeast corner, throw the blood against the corner in one action, and it gets on the north and east sides, and that is like an ola, right? Kilu the achas shu shtayim, that you do one activity and it counts for 2 sides and it covers 2 sides, and then you go to the southwestern corner and you apply them separately, just like a korban chatas is done separately. So the Gemara says, but how did you determine that this is the way that we want to apply both characteristics? By going to the northeast corner and throwing it again, on the corner, and then going to the southwestern corner and applying them separately, like this combo. Maybe what it means is that you do both of the characteristics completely. So Ki'ilu, go to the northeastern corner, throw it against the wall, get it on, one action that covers both walls. Go to the southwestern corner, do the same thing, throw it against the corner, it'll be one action that gets on the western and southern corners, walls. And now start over. Go to the southeastern corner and apply the blood, or I guess go to the southern wall, maybe the eastern wall. Go to the eastern wall, apply it separately. Go to the northern wall, apply it separately. Go to the western wall, apply it separately. Go to the southern wall, apply it separately. Kilu, do both 100% instead of both 50%. Does that make sense? So lo matzinu damin shemechapin v'chozin v'mechapin. So the Gemara says, well, come on. When do we ever see that you'll do the complete work for one and then start over and do the complete work for the other? That first we'll do shtayim shein arba, right, in the northeastern corner and the southwestern corner, and then start over and start applying the blood on all 4 sides. Come on, we never see that. To which the Gemara says, seriously? That's your concern, that there's no precedent for this? Do we have any other precedent for the other description, which is that first you're throwing it in the corner for one and then applying separately to the other sides for the other? This 50% where you do shtayim shein arba on one corner, then arba shein arba on the other corner, is also something that we don't see elsewhere. Rather, what do you have to say? You have to say, look, yes, this is a unique situation, but the pasuk compares the ola and the chatas, so we have to satisfy both. And you wanted to suggest we satisfy both by throwing it on the corner on one side and then doing the other 2 sides separately. But why can't we also suggest that maybe what it means is that you do shtayim shein arba, you throw it on the 2 corners and then start over again and apply all 4 sides separately? So the Gemara answers, Hosam pisuk matanas ba'almi. To which the Gemara says, yeah, but the difference is that the second suggestion is too obvious. Ki'ilu, the second suggestion, which is first throw it in the northeastern corner against both walls, and then throw it in the southwestern corner against both walls, and then start over and throw it against the eastern side, and then the northern side, and then the western side, and then the southern side. It's too much of a balagan. This is pretty subtle. You go to the northeastern corner, you throw it against the corner, you then go to the southern corner and just kind of the southwestern corner, and just kind of subtly, instead of throwing it in one action, you just apply it separately. Done. Therefore, this is kind of a way that we can satisfy both the chatas and the ola without having to get too dramatic. V'neisev achas sheishtayim lemata k'maisei ola Now the Gemara gets into more detail, which is okay, fine. So we do the northeastern corner by throwing it against the corner and it hits both sides. We do the southwestern corner by applying them separately. Great. Let me ask you a kasha. There's something on the Mizbeach called the Chut HaSikra. It's this line that runs like halfway through the Mizbeach. Now, the Korban Chatas, the blood of the Chatas goes on the top of the Mizbeach, on the corners of the Mizbeach, above this line. The Korban Ola, when you throw the blood against the wall, you throw it below the Chut HaSikra, below this line. So we're saying, okay, fine. So if we're going to do the first two walls like the Ola and the last two walls like the Chatas, so then why don't we do the first two walls below the Chut HaSikra, and the last two you should have to do above the Chut HaSikra, like a Chatas. The Gemara says, well, we don't find that we ever have blood, that part of it is above the Chut HaSikra and part of it is below the Chut HaSikra. So we're not going to do that. Vilo, do we really not have such a precedent? But we learn in the Mishnah, it says that when the Kohen Gadol would take the blood of the par, of the cow, he would throw it towards, in the direction of the kapores, once above and 7 below. So doesn't that sound like, he's doing one higher up and one and 7 lower down? So we do have a precedent for doing higher and lower. To which the Gemara says, kimatzlif. No, what it means is kimatzlif. My kimatzlif, what does that mean? Malchur Rav Yehuda kiminagdana. It's like a fellow administering lashes, that when you administer lashes to a fellow, so you don't administer all of them in the same exact location, you kind of spread them out. So here also what it's saying is that there wasn't like a wall and he would like throw it above this point and 7 below a certain point. No, it means that in the direction, and like, the first one would be further out, and then the other 7 would be kind of like closer to him. So like, in lines, so to speak. But it doesn't necessarily mean that literally he was like throwing it above a particular location on a wall and then the 7 below a particular location. It was just more of a technique for sprinkling, that he would sprinkling further and then closer. Vilo, but again, we don't have any precedent for putting blood above and below. We learn in the Mishnah, that he would use this blood and he'd throw it on the Mizbeach HaKtoris. Al tahar rosh Mizbeach, on this tahorness of the Mizbeach. Sheva pavim, 7 times. My lav, what does this tahorness mean? Apalge the Mizbeach, halfway the Mizbeach. Kidamri, as people say, tiar tiara upalga the Yoma. What does that mean? Tiar, that what, like halfway through the day is half of the day, I guess? And therefore what we want to say is that he's going to, right, when it says that he will throw the blood al tiar rosh Mizbeach, it means, part of it above half of the Mizbeach, part of it below half of the Mizbeach. Amrav bar Shila lo aguf of the Mizbeach. No, what it means is that he's going to throw the blood on top of the Mizbeach. The Pasuk says, and like the, sky for Tohar, like for purity. So what it means is that he would first be Matahir the Mizbach HaKetoris, meaning he would clear it off from its ashes, and only then would he sprinkle the blood on top of it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he was sprinkling above and below per se, it was more that he was sprinkling on top. Okay? So we don't have a precedent for sprinkling above and below, and therefore we do not do the first throwing against the northeastern wall below the Chut HaSikra, and then the last 2 applications of blood by the western and southern walls above the Chut HaSikra. We don't do that because we don't have a precedent for blood being above and below. Fine. Great. Ma'ishna d'yoiv ola b'reisha, v'adar yoiv d'chatas, nesiv b'reisha d'chatas, v'adar nesiv d'ola. Okay, now the Gemara continues on the opinion of Reb Shimon Ish Amitzpah, who has this interesting hybrid approach to the Korban Tamid, which is that the first you throw it against the northeastern wall like an ola, and then you apply the blood separately to the western and southern walls like a chatos. And we say, well, how come ola comes first? How come we first, we throw it against the wall once that throws on, that gets on 2 walls? Maybe, right? Ma'ishna d'yoiv ola b'reisha. How come we do the technique of the ola first? V'hadar yoiv the chatas, and afterwards we apply the blood separately like a chatas. Nesiv b'reisha the chatas. Why don't we do it like the chatas first and apply the blood separately? V'hadar nesiv the ola, and then afterwards we'll do it like the ola and throw it against the corner and it'll get on both walls. Keeping the ola he kadma b'reisha. Which the Gemara says, well, after all, this is a korban ola, so we'll do the technique of the ola first. Umaishnadu yoiv mizrachis tzfonus umayravis dromis. Nasiv dromis mizrachis vada tzfonus mayravis. Fekti Gemara, how come specifically the northeast and southwestern corners? Right, again, umaishnadu yoiv mizrachis tzfonus, how come specifically we're talking about the northeast corner, umayravis dromis, and the southwestern corner? Nasiv dromis mizrachis, why don't we throw the blood on the southeastern corner, vada tzfonus mayravis, and the northwestern corner? How did we choose which are the two corners? Amri, they say, ola tuna yisod. Well, there's a technical prevention there, which is that the korban ola, you have to throw on the corner of the mizbeach where there is the yisod. The yisod was this like one amma like ledge at the very bottom of the mizbeach, and it didn't go all the way around the mizbeach. It completely was on the northern side, it was completely on the western side, and it only went one amma in to the eastern side by its northeast corner, and one amma into the southern side by the southwestern corner. And therefore, if you would throw the blood on the southeastern corner, well, there was no yesod there, and we need there to be a yesod where you throw the blood. And therefore, you can't use the southeastern corner. Where am I? Mizrachis vada tzfonos maravis amre ola tu'uni yisod v'kain dromis mizrachis lo avale yisod. There was no yisod on the southeastern corner, and therefore we keep on moving around the mizbeach, and we get to the northeastern corner where there is yisod on both sides. So that's where we throw the blood. Now the Gemara says, okay, fine. So we're going to throw the blood on the northeast and southwestern corners respectively. How come northeast comes first? Why don't we first throw the blood on the southwestern corner and then the northeastern corner? So the Gemara answers, well, because we said, since whenever you turn, you should always turn to your right. And therefore, if you imagine climbing up to the top of the Mizbeach, so if you turn to the right, first you get to the southeastern corner. Now, of course, you can't throw the blood on the southeastern corner because there's no yesod. So then you keep on moving, and the next corner you get to is the northeastern corner, and already that corner you would be able to throw the blood. So, Bereisha Ba'u Paga. Where am I? There you go. And therefore, if you climb to the top of this Mizbeach and you make a right, and you get to the southeastern corner, and you can't throw the blood there because there's no yesod, so you keep on moving, the next place where you get to is the northeastern corner, so because you get there first, that's where you throw the blood, and only then later when you get to the southwestern corner do you throw the blood there. In fact, the Gemara, 1 second, why are we assuming that we do the korban ola, right, the tamid, the ola, like a korban chatas, right? We're saying, izim echad lechatas al ola satamid. So Shimon Ish HaMitzvah jumps to the conclusion that, well, we must have to do the korban ola like a chatas, and therefore throw the blood on one corner and then the next two corners separately. Why not? Well, how come it doesn't mean that we should do the korban chatas like an ola and leave the ola alone? Right? How do we know that we're saying that the korban ola should be done like a chatas? Maybe the Gemara is saying that do the korban chatas like an ola and leave the ola alone. Don't say that. As the pasuk says, al ola satam yeyasav v'nisko, on the ola of the tamid it should be done, and with its libations. What's the pasuk saying? Midi the chatas shdi ola. That characteristics of the chatas you should be throwing al ha'ola, on the ola. So that is how we know that it's the ola that is picking up the characteristics of the chatas, according to Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzvah. However, we're going to stop here because once we get started here, it's going to kind of go and run for a little bit. So we're going to stop here. Interesting. Yeah, it was interesting, just like to compare the difference between these korbanos and stuff that are coming up in Masechta Yoma versus like Masechta Shkalim, where it's just, I feel like there's more of a flow over here, which makes it more easily able to be approached. Okay, so today we studied Daf Tezvav, Daf 15 of Masechta Yoma. What did we discuss? So we started off continuing on the on trying to figure out how come in the first parak of Yoma we seem to be saying that first comes the avoda of the Ketores and then the Neiris, whereas in the second parak of Yoma we're saying first comes the Neiris and then the Ketores. Abaye answered this kasha by saying the first parak is talking about the last two Neiris, whereas the second parak is talking about the first five Neiris. Rav Papa says no, what it means is that the first parak when we say Ketores and then Neiris, it's talking about the opinion of the rabbis who say that you divide up the first five and the last two Neiris with Ketores, whereas the second parak, which says that we do the Neiris and then the Ketores, that's the opinion of Abba Shaul, who says that first you do all seven Neiris and only afterwards you do the Ketores. We then got to the machlokas between the Tanna Kama and Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah regarding how do you do the blood of the Tamid of the Korban Tamid. So the Tanna Kama says that you throw the blood, you do Shtaim Shein Arba, you throw the blood against the northeastern wall in such a way that one throwing it against the wall gets on both walls, and you do the same thing in the southwestern wall. Whereas Reb Shimon Ish HaMitzpah says that the northeastern wall, you do that, you throw it against the corner, it gets on both. However, the southwestern wall, you apply them to the southern and western walls separately, respectively. That was their machlokas. However, we're going to pick up from here tomorrow to study together Daf Tezayin. Cheers.